Hello learners, today we'll learn about data types in Java. So mainly there are two data types in Java, primitive and non-primitive data types. Primitive data types simply are predefined data types, that is, they are already defined in Java and they can be used easily in the program. Non-primitive data types, on the other hand, are reference data types. Reference. So these reference data type can be used to refer objects and call methods. So in primitive data types we have Boolean and numeric. Boolean, we all know that, has two values, true and false. In numeric we have character and integral data types. In integer we have byte short int long, and floating point means decimal, we have float and double. Let us see some main difference between primitive and non-primitive data types. Primitive data types are already defined in Java, whereas non-primitive types are created by the programmer and it's not defined. So let us see an example where the programmer defines in a string based program. Suppose if I write string s as equal to hello, then this string s is equal to hello is defined by the programmer. Now non-primitive types can be used to call methods to perform certain operations. So let us see an example where I can use this string s is equal to hello to call certain predefined methods. Suppose if I write s is equal to char at one position, so this method will return the character at one position of the string. Now a primitive data type has always a value, that is the default values. Integers have 0, float have decimal point 0.0f, while non-primitives are always null. Primitive type starts with lowercase while non-primitive starts with an uppercase. Now the size of primitive data types we'll see later depend on the data type, that is int, float, double. They all have a specific size predefined, they are already predefined, where non-primitive types have the same size. Now in this table we can see these primitive data types are taken from these wrapper classes. Now we'll learn later what are wrapper classes. So only one difference we can see, that the wrapper classes, the name that has a capital letter in the starting compared to its primitive data type. Now let us see the description of the data types, that is primitive data types, the sizes and the default values. So these are all the primitive data types. Their sizes: byte short, int, long. So long and double have the maximum size, that is 8 bytes. Boolean is just 1 bit because it stores only two values, that is true and false. Character is 2 bytes. Now these default values are very important for any programmer. These default values should be known. Suppose if you define any primitive data type in the program and if you don't initialize any given value, so by default their default values are stored in memory. So mostly in exam they ask about char default values. So to remember the default value of char is very important. Boolean false is very easy. Generally student gets confused because float the default value is 0.0 f and double is 0.0 d. Student keep doing the same mistake writing 0.0 only for float, but to differentiate between float and double, this f and d is given. This is for float and this is for d. So the most important is to remember default value of char. String value, all as we all know that it is a non-primitive, so it's all non-primitive are have null default value, and this byte short int long, especially byte short int has 0 default value and long has 0 l. Next we will see one of the most important concepts in data types, that is typecasting or type conversion. And what is typecasting? Simply it is converting one primitive data type to another data type, that is typecasting. Casting means converting. So basically it is of two types, widening and narrowing. Widening is most commonly called implicit typecasting. Why? And implicit simply meaning it is done automatically by the Java compiler, and narrowing it is done it is generally called explicitly typecasting because it is done by the programmer. So in these two diagrams we can see that in widening typecasting we are converting from lower data type to higher data type, that is in terms of the sizes, and in narrowing we are shortening their size. Now let us see these programs to understand explicit and implicit type conversion. So let us first see what is implicit type conversion. By the help of this program, here we have taken an num variable which is of integer data type, and here it is automatically converted by the Java compiler into this long data type. So it's very easy to understand implicit type conversion because it is automatically done by the Java compiler. But in explicit type conversion we have to use a special syntax, that is the type which we are going to convert, we have to write it in these curved brackets. So here long data type is converted into integer data type, so we are using int here in bracket, we are writing before this long num variable. Now let us see what are wrapper classes in Java. A wrapper class is a class whose object contains primitive types. So we can create an object to wrap class. It contains field, and its field we can store primitive data types. So earlier when we saw a table, that is this table, so here we see that these primitive data types has a wrapper class. So now we'll learn about more about wrapper classes. So basically what is the need of a wrapper class? They convert primitive data types into objects. This is the main use of wrapper classes. So wrapper class provides mechanism to convert primitive into object and object into primitive. We'll better understand if we simply see a program. Now to understand more about wrapper classes, we'll see these two processes, autoboxing and unboxing. Autoboxing simply is an automatic conversion of primitive data type into its corresponding wrapper class. For example, byte to byte int is integer wrapper class. This int we all know that is a integer data type, and this is a wrapper class integer, where I we can see is in capital letters. So here we see an automatic conversion, that is autoboxing program. So here we see that we have defined an integer variable 20 and we are creating an object of this wrapper class integer I, and we are converting that integer value into its object of the wrapper class, that is autoboxing. Now let us see what is unboxing. Unboxing simply when you open a box or open a gift wrap. So it is the automatic conversion of the wrapper type in its corresponding primitive data type, that is unboxing. So here we see an unboxing program. So we have created, as previous autoboxing program, we have created an object of the integer wrapper class, and after creating an object we are putting that value of the object into a integer variable, that is a primitive data type variable. Thank you.